Hello, community. Welcome to DevCentral Connects. I am Jason Rahm.
And I'm John Wagnon. It's good to see everybody.
We are super excited that you guys are here today. We have a phenomenal show planned.
Yes, we do. We got some great people coming on today. So a lot of great topics. So yeah, it should be a lot of fun today.
Yeah. So since last time at this Bat channel, how's your week been?
Well, it's been good. It's been an interesting, everyone's kind of living the quarantine life right now, right? And Jason, I see that you've got something going on up here with the salad on top, right? So you've got to explain that to everybody. That requires explanation, right?
Yeah, so my hair doesn't really do anything except grow out. You know, I have all these people that can grow their hair long and it like flows nicely. Mine just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so in the lack of the ability to get a haircut right now, I figure if I have to suffer with it, so do you guys. And so this is suffrage number 1, and we'll see what it looks like next week. But you know, we're gonna try and crazy up this thing.
Well, crazy is what you have done. Others would call it, like April out there would call it, epic. So you know, I don't know how April defines the word epic, but maybe maybe you could call it that. Others have called it awesome haircut, grown up shin shan. And then, but Pytel wants to know if you lost a bet, which I got to say, I don't know.
You know, my wife would say, yes, I lost a bet. In fact, I walked out the house and she's like, are you sure you want to do that?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you know, if we're not anything, we're family here. So, you know, I'm sure I'll get it as well from you guys as I get it from my own family.
Man, yeah, that's the beautiful thing, you know, community and all that, right? We just all hang out together. We live life together. We take the good with the bad. We take the short hair and the long, you know, we take the spike and all the rest. So it's good stuff, man. Good stuff.
That's right. Well, today we're going to kick off first segment. We're going to kick off with a little talk around the power of community. And then we're going to look at some tension in technology. And then we're going to close out with a brief look at what agility next week is going to look like. So first off, we're going to talk community. And we're going to introduce a new segment we like to call Pasilva's Perspective.
All righty.
Peter,
and there he
welcome
is.
to the show, man.
There he is.
Joining us. We won't say anything about the technical difficulties earlier, will we?
No, hey. No,
well, we weren't going to, but now we have.
Peter, these are not the technical difficulties you're looking for, right?
No.
Good to go, man. Good to go.
Thanks for having me.
Peter, what you got?
Yeah.
So today is all about community. And when I was a kid in the 70s, community kind of meant your physical geographic location. It kind of had this exclusive vibe. Either you belonged or you didn't belong. Even when you met new people, you know, oh, do you live around here? Maybe it was, you know, same school, same church, same markets, those kinds of things. So that used to be community. Then the internet arrived and community kind of bloomed into the world. You didn't necessarily need your neighborhood or geographic location to belong to a community. Early on in the internet, I kind of had this thought, this fear that we would create a society of hermits, kind of like we are today to some extent, because you really didn't need to interact with real people to get things done, to purchase stuff, to watch entertainment, those kinds of things. But ultimately, our humanity won, and we maintained our connections both in the physical realm while we learn this whole online realm of community. And then when I joined F5 in the early aughts, the DevCentral community welcomed me into the fold. I, started writing and producing some videos, and I kind of found my people. And what I loved about the DevCentral community is how open, supportive, irritating, arrogant, and fantastic this community is. We love to chew on problems, and we love to challenge each other with these kind of technology ideas, where I know we're going to talk technology challenges a little bit later. And even on a personal note, the community was there for me when my job wasn't so certain a few years ago. The DevCentral crew welcomed me with open arms. And with that in mind, I'd like to kind of maybe welcome some of my old brothers in arms, not only Jason and John, but I know we have a couple of special guests today to maybe dig further into what community means to all of us.
Absolutely. So Peter, with that, we will welcome to DevCentral Connects
Surprise.
two of the founding fathers, two of the shoulders that this whole community has been built on. Maybe 4 shoulders. I don't know. How many shoulders? How many shoulders you got? Whatever. But here they are, Joe and Colin. Great to see you guys.
How's it going, everybody?
I am so excited that you guys joined us. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
You know, all these years later, I am still a fanboy. So,
absolutely.
Please. Do you get to be a fanboy if also we've worked together for like a decade? Is that a thing?
I think I do. Yeah, I do, because I definitely want to give you guys the table to talk for a little bit about the power of community. But let me just start that. I kind of owe my career at F5 to what you guys built at DevCentral, because before DevCentral, before F5, I was hardcore network engineer. And I didn't know much about layers. I mean, I knew about layer 4, but as far as applications and protocols that layer 4 and up, I really just wasn't that well versed in that. And getting involved at DevCentral really opened my eyes to what was possible. And you guys couldn't have been more welcoming and nice and helpful. You guys, along with all the core developers, think of Unruly and Rapmaster C and Dr. Teeth and all those guys in Wayback Machine for early years DevCentral, and it was just a phenomenal change of focus and scope for my entire career. So for that, thank you. You guys are legends in my eyes.
Absolutely. So Joe, it started, I believe, 2003. Is that sort of the right time frame? And how did that come about?
It kind of starts a little bit before that. So it's funny. Think back to the Beatles quote. It was 20 years ago today. It's almost 20 years ago. 2001 was when I came on and we started building our iControl APIs to build extensibility and automation on our platform. Till that point, there was no Dig or GitHub, those kind of things, places for you to Stack Exchange, places to share information, places to go to get it, tips on writing code and help on writing code. So we built that out, and we did a pretty good job at documenting that and giving that to our customers. But really what we wanted to do was to open it up and make this information available, bring in, not us profess and say, okay, this is how you have to do things. It's like, here's a set of tools. Let's kind of get together. And how can we get input from the field, from customers, from partners, and to make the whole process better? So DevCentral kind of grew out of that, mainly as a primary way for us to share documentation. But static documentation is one thing. Let's build some chat on top of it. Let's build a way for folks to provide feedback, to contribute to it, to make it better. We had a limited staff at the time. There was me, basically me at the beginning of DevCentral. Colin, you came on very quick soon after. But it started with me building a server under our desk, finding a web platform, .NET Nuke at the time, and building a prototype, and somehow finding a way to bypass F5 security. And back in those days, security was a little bit lax, but getting our website running off of a desk, a server under my desk. And IT found out about that and got going, and then we quickly moved that into our data center as soon as Colin came on board. But it was really critical for me, and there was resistance internal to we don't want to make this open to anybody. We want to make it so that we've got verified customers and make sure they have support contracts and that kind of thing. So we pushed strong, and it took I don't know how many versions of DevCentral we went through with redesign and update.
7.
Probably 7.
7. He just
remembers.
They all kind of flowed together. But it was important for people on our side, and it quickly became where it's less us trying to be dictators and saying this is how you do it, more being stewards and helping foster the community to contribute. So code share and those kind of things, ability for customers, partners, end users to be part of that publishing process, blogs, those kind of things, I think was critical to the ease of use and the growth of our technologies in our customers and enterprises. So, sorry, long answer.
No, that's great.
Brings back a lot of good memories.
And so how far along were they when you came on, or was Joe, Colin, when you came on?
Yeah, so that was a fun trip. So Joe started the thing under his desk, but Joe was working as one of the, I don't know if you were a senior or a principal or very high up software engineer at F5 at the time, building iControl. So the reason that Joe ended up starting the community to support the iControl documentation is because he built iControl. That's a thing worth noting. Speaking of shoulders to stand on, like literally there wouldn't have been a career for me to have at F5 if there weren't a community, blah, 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 right? Yeah, that's the whole thing. But he built iControl, and that was still his day job. Like when I joined the team, that was still what Joe was doing most of the time. He had built this system in his quote unquote free time as a labor of love because he thought it was the correct way to do it and that kind of thing. So how far along was it? I mean, it was not far along. I think the community had something like 1,800 members when I joined. It was literally, I think 2 months after you made it go from a desktop under your desk to a 2U server in the internal data center kind of thing. Like it was brand new. I was the first official employee on the team. There wasn't a DevCentral team before this, which was interesting.
I was a borrowed resource at the time.
Yeah. And you transitioned over later and it was full time. It was awesome, right? We did the Joe and Colin show around the world. It was a blast. But like until then, like this was a notion that, like Joe said, he was fighting for. Like he wanted this thing. He thought it was the correct way to do it. And then I got brought on. It was funny because I was a software engineer before that. And I had worked doing, I just came fresh off of a job where I was building Perl-based daemons into FreeBSD to act as if there were jails in the system before the FreeBSD kernel had jails. And like I was just doing cool hacking stuff, right? I didn't know about communities. I didn't know anything. I'm just a nerd that likes to talk to people. So then they give me this gig. They're like, hey, like we think that we want you to do the coding thing and the talking thing. What do you think? And I said, I mean, yeah, I like both of those things. You can't shut me up. So absolutely. So I started doing this thing and I had no idea what the heck I was doing. And there wasn't a playbook and no one, but like Joe said, it was cool. So we have some docs and there's some people using it and they have questions. Let's start with answer their questions and build content they want. So we did. And we started doing that. And like when I started, it was, I think somewhere in the 2K-ish range. And I was at F5 for 10 years. And when I left, it was right around 175,000 members, right? Like people really appreciate content they care about and getting to converse and talk about things and have solutions answered and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, you have this tension between, what you as a company want and what the customers want, and where that overlap of it, that Venn diagram overlap, that's the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
And I think, DevCentral historically has done a good job with that. And certainly, in the early years spinning it up, that's what made the difference, because, you're making all these products that do amazing things. And, in some companies that I worked at, first the 2 companies I worked at, they said, hey, here's a new load balancer, put the load balancer in. I'm like, well, okay, but, you're spending an awful lot of money for a load balancer when it can do X, Y, Z. And getting over the political hurdles of, hey, I own this box and I don't want it to do more than that because then we have more risk politically within the organization. And I'm like, well, okay, but maybe we should solve that problem instead of, just dumbing down your capabilities in your infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I will say community brought, Jason, if I recall correctly, you were the winner of the first iRules contest. Is that,
I was. Yeah.
So
it's funny how that happened too, because I submitted on the very last day because it's like, oh, they're giving T-shirts. I so want a T-shirt. So I like submitted one of my iRules from my stuff. And then I was like, a few months later, it's like, I emailed Jeff and I was like, so, hey, what happened with the contest? Because I'd really like my T-shirt. And like 2 days later, it's like, oh, by the way, congratulations, you won the contest.
You win.
So you didn't know then that you had won?
No.
You had to ask Jeff.
To be clear, we didn't know either. Like I judged that whole thing with some people. That was we were brand new. We didn't know.
We were making that up.
We this talk about not knowing the shot before you get there. Holy, like, yeah.
Wait a minute.
But,
is this hot off the press news? Did Jason really win or not? No.
Oh, Jason won. But I absolutely remember this was we got the submissions and there was a stack of them. And we're like, yeah, we're going to get to judging those at some point. But like you have to remember, this is the point where there's one employee for the community and half of Joe's time when he could get away from the other code he was writing. And we're trying to build content and start the thing. And so like, this was back in the day, like Jeff and I were like staying late, ordering pizza and staying into the night over and over and over to try and like get the content done and get the communication done. And so we didn't get around to we didn't even look at the things that had come in for, I think, something like 4 weeks. It was awful. It was a mess. We were so busy.
But to circle back on the community thing, it's the one thing that I found, and the resistance early on with the higher ups was that, okay, what if people come in to face the property, or what if you have folks that are just trying to make you look bad and that kind of thing. I will say that the community of F5 users are exceeded my expectations for what I would exceed on on the very positive side of things. None of that worry came to pass. We had a few folks post some things that were like out of scope or not appropriate or whatever. One or two here or there over the years. It's pretty amazing, and that just says the whole community of F5 users out there, the integrity and just the type of people they are, is pretty awesome.
Well, and when I was a customer, I really took offense at that when people would do that because I knew that you guys as employees were taking time, other than Colin, who was a DevCentral like head count. Everybody else that contributed at DevCentral was doing it in their spare time because they were passionate about community. And so as I got more and more involved and felt ownership, even as a customer, I was like, hey, knock that nonsense off, because we're all here to help each other, and I don't want that here. And so I was just real grateful that those were those few bad apples here and there, were few and far between. And honestly, most of the time it was somebody who was stressed and under a bad scenario, and they were quick to say, oh, you know what, totally, I'm sorry. And so it wasn't that they were a bad apple, it's just they were having a bad day.
Yeah, for sure.
And to Joe's point, yes, way past my expectations. It was interesting. I was maybe young and naive. Maybe I'm just an idealist around community. Whatever. I have all sorts of soapboxes. But genuinely, it was very hard to convince people in business roles that this was going to be an asset, not a liability, right? And I think one of the things that F5 and DevCentral got really, really right is they kind of built this by and for the same people, right? They put people like me and Joe, not to say there's magic there or whatever, but they took nerds that really care about the technology. Still are passionate about how to build these things and customer solutions, and this was important, so we bled for it and sweat for it, and when people asked questions, we took it seriously and deep answers, and it removed this whole layer of business continuity that has to exist over most communications, especially as the company grew, right? When I joined F5, the company was 320 people. Joe's been around way before that. It was a small company at the time. As the company grew and got bigger and bigger, and it's harder and harder to have a voice heard just inherently, having direct access to engineers that are really building the solutions, I think it kind of engendered, like you're describing, Jason, this feeling from the community users where they felt like we were all invested together, because we weren't some ivory tower corporate figures. We were just nerds writing code that really cared about it, and we always wanted to do our best to take care of the people that were in the community that were asking questions. But it kind of built this thing somewhat by happenstance, somewhat because the community stuff, where everyone wanted to toe the same line, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I kept getting you mean I'm not just talking to a customer support tier 1 or tier 5 rep or whatever. You're actually talking to developers, engineers. So having that one-to-one feedback was I think part of our F5 team as well, for engineers to be able to get access to what customers were doing in real time. That was pretty beneficial to F5 as a company.
Oh, it's huge.
Awesome. Hey,
looks like Jeff Browning's online. So hey, Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah. Hey, here's
Jeff.
Really quick from Jeff. It's great to see you, Jeff.
Can't leave him out of this, because Jeff was the manager. He was the guiding force. He's the one who pushed to get this going, manager approval. And I'll give Dan Matt a shout too. He was our EVP at the time, who kind of stood up for us on DevCentral to do this, against the majority of the other leadership team with regards to the risk versus reward. So a few folks stuck their necks out and really tried hard, and can't have to appreciate that. Yeah.
Dan Matt, I think I was his last headcount hire on the way in, and so thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, no joke. We're standing on the shoulder of giants, and it's cool to be able to talk to a couple of them. But there was another comment that came in from Aurelian that, so speaking to what you guys were talking about, not only, are we kind of nerding out, just geeking out here, but just the quality of content on DevCentral. So Aurelian says, hey, I remember a colleague explaining to me what an iRule is doing. All I could say is, hey, only DevCentral, that's the only place that could have come from. Right. So it's really cool. Appreciate that comment. But one thing I would love to hear is if you guys had any stories on some, hey, here's how DevCentral helped me, or maybe from a customer or other community member perspective, like, hey, I was having this problem, and then boom, Colin or Joe stepped in, and real life kind of stuff.
Never happened. We didn't do useful things.
So how about this though? As you guys moved on from DevCentral, how has community impacted your careers and lives, moving forward once you moved on from the DevCentral team?
Colin, you can go ahead.
I mean, a ton. So first of all, there's the undeniable impact of getting to be part of the kind of company F5 was and still is, but I'm not there anymore. But the ride of F5 at the time and the ride of DevCentral at F5, massively formative. I was young. I was 22, 23, whatever, when I joined the team. I was young, it was formative, it was massive, right? So there's all of that growth, all of that, it was huge for my career, for my development, etc. All kinds of coding chops, it's all that kind of stuff. But also it really built, I think what you're talking about, Pete, it built some formative notions of the way in which I believed communities can and should interact, right? How do they work? What are they useful for? Why does it matter? And it really it galvanized in me this thing around human connection. And I talk about this thing where it's a little kumbaya, but it really is people for people, solutions together, more heads to solve the problem. And so the way my career went, I ended up being a software engineering manager, running a couple of teams. And I can directly tie my management style, or the way I communicate and the way I help run the teams, to the way that we worked as a team, both the team of DevCentral employees, but also the way we communicated with the community itself. How do you interact? How do you stay solution focused? How do you keep in mind the actual goal of whatever the team customer relationship is, right? So for me, community has been a massively formative notion where the goal is the end solution. What are you trying to do? How do you solve that? And it kind of cuts sideways through politics, red tape, business agendas, et cetera, et cetera. And as long as you stay focused on what are we trying to achieve and how do we all pull the oar towards that thing, I think it's been a really positive experience for me in my career overall, not just when I'm dealing with community directly, dealing with software delivery, dealing with security issues that I've been doing for the past few years, that kind of stuff. It's been a really, really positive thing and has changed the way that I interact with technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's hard to kind of follow that, Colin. That was a really good response on that front.
Sorry.
I will say what I took out of it is just an appreciation from, if you're a software engineer, you're writing code, you're building a product, putting yourselves in the shoes of the end users, the customers, the people who are using your product. That's a hard thing to do. Typically, the sales folks are the only ones interacting with customers, or your account managers, that kind of thing. So year after year after year really helps put your mind in perspective of other people's, what their needs are, what they want. I left F5 at about late 2017, founded a startup company. We're at a co-locating space, kind of a different kind of, it's a physical community of different companies, but we're doing a lot of things with sharing technology, sharing of ideas. There's really, you got to weigh the risk of, I'm not giving away my information, but I think there's a more growing and bigger understanding of sharing is better. Even keeping everything to yourself, you're limiting yourself. Sharing means that other people will share with you, and that everybody's opportunities are better. So I think that's the biggest thing I've taken out of it, and how I'm running my team, and how I'm interacting with our company and our customers and other companies that we work with.
I think that's critical to community. Go ahead, Colin. I'll follow.
I talk all the time. I'm sorry. You guys.
You're all good.
But Joe's comment, I think, is really important. It spurred a thing that I wanted to mention because it's been a huge, like, cliche North Star something. But like, it's been massive to me, which is the customer or solution focus, right? Like you just said, Joe, and I super agree. One of the things that was so valuable in the time at DevCentral, at F5, and that I've carried forward is this notion of putting yourself in their shoes. And it's been interesting because I did so much of that for so long at an early time of my career because of DevCentral that other companies I've been at, like, not in a negative way at all, but one of the things I was able to bring to the table and really help them with is that process, because it is easy as an engineering organization to be focused on the code and the product and the firmware, wherever the things are. And when you pause and ask the question from a different direction and not go, oh, what's the most correct way to do this as far as, Python is concerned, or whatever the heck you're writing in, to say, oh, but wait, hold on, forget that. What's the customer trying to achieve? What do you actually need here? You get a different set of priorities. You're not looking at like code efficiency and the way that it rolls up correctly into your Git process and the runners. You're looking at like, oh, but what does the customer need for their actual solution to be delivered in a way that's meaningful? Like, that stance, I think, has been a huge like direction for my whole career.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, hey guys, I know we've only got a couple of minutes here for this little segment left, but wanted to say thanks so much for being here. I don't know if there's any last parting words of wisdom with the community here that our founding fathers would want to share, kind of a thing.
It is great to see you guys, by the way.
Oh man,
yeah, you too, guys.
Like, my heart is all full and I've got the feels going on.
Twitter paid it, if I remember right.
Twitter paid it. Yes.
The one thing I'll say is that give and you shall receive.
Yeah,
that's
really
basically holds true. And the more you're willing to share, the more you're willing to open up, the more you're willing to you're able to grow and get more out of it. So I think
Yeah, I honestly think the exact same sentiment for me. Like, it's be an us and not a them, right? Like, like the world is always broken into us versus them situations. Yeah. Look at security, look at anything, right? Like, if we are working as a company of, I don't care how big your company is, 200 or 2,000 people, trying to solve the security problems of the world, like, you're against millions of people that are working against you, right? The way you leverage that is by making all of us working together, like this community notion. Again, it's a little kumbaya, but I really do believe it. It's this notion of like, if you open it up, if you allow people the information and access, like Joe's saying, suddenly we're all working together towards the same goal, and they're not like waiting at the door for you to give them what you can. Like, it's a very different mindset. So yeah, I think being us.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much.
Cool.
A lot of fun.
Have a great day. Peter, thank you so much for coming on, for your De Silva's perspective, and we'll look forward to those in the future.
Anytime.
And before we move on to our next topic, we got some comments we wanted to address.
Yeah.
And
pop these in here really quick. All righty.
So one of them, do Aurelian's.
Yeah, right here.
Yep. So would Kevin Stewart join this weekly channel one day? Absolutely. I've already reached out to him a couple of times. He's just crazy busy. So we'll get Kevin on here one point. And in fact, with Kevin in particular, when we switched over to the I guess not the new platform we're on now, but the last iteration of DevCentral on DNN, it was a cut point for points. And so Kevin, like Aaron Hooley was like the crazy leader. And so Julio he was not catchable. And then when it went to 0, Kevin's like, and he took off and nobody had a shot to catch him at all. So,
awesome. I had years of history of points once we actually started the point thing. So I got quickly eclipsed by Julio. Yeah, I'm glad.
Yep, they were monsters. So awesome. Yeah, Colin and Joe, you guys drop off. You can appreciate you guys coming. Have a great day. Yeah. And
thanks, folks.
We'll take care.
Awesome, man. We'll see you guys.
Peace.
All right.
See ya. Good seeing you.
Pasilva, always a pleasure, my man. Good to see you, brother. All righty.
All right. And so what else we got?
Yeah, I think here's just another quick comment from Marcus. People like the involvement in community activity instead of a more closed shop. I think that gets to the heart of what those guys were saying with just, share your knowledge. It's, if you try to hold on to it, say, no, this is mine, that's that's not the way to go. So yeah, thanks so much, Marcus, for that comment. It's really cool. And then Aurelian had another good comment as well about administered Cisco, Citrix, all that stuff. But DevCentral's one of the reasons to choose F5. It's a huge differentiator, right? It's a great place to be.
Yeah, and we did not pay you for that, so but thank you. That's awesome.
That's right.
And back on the community, you're talking about investment in people. And early career, I had people who did hold all information to the shelves. Like, well, if I share that with you, my job might be at risk, and I might be shown the door. But I feel like when you hold on to information, it's like you don't necessarily know as much about that information as you think you do, because teaching other people stuff makes you know it better. And so, if you're always in the mode of training others to replace you, you're going to be upward mobility if that's what you desire. And so I've always been a big proponent. I had mentors early in my life, even before the founders of DevCentral, which I'm so thankful they were able to make it today. Jeff, I know you weren't able to make it, but thanks for dropping by at least and saying hi. But early career at my first startup, Bob Bosco and Dave Barman, you're out there. You're probably not watching this.
Maybe one day you'll watch.
But maybe one day. And those two guys were formative in my early career of what it meant to be a mentor, and they were phenomenal. And I carried that forward in every position I've been since, to be a trainer, even if my job title doesn't require that. And because I learn so much more when I share with others.
Yep. Here's another great comment from Ross. If you give people information, they're free to gain more and grow. And yeah, just could not agree more. It's one other thing that I would mention as I first came on to DevCentral, which, man, I'm very thankful for Joe and just everyone that we've talked about here. I mean, this has been my career at F5 as well, so I owe my career to this. But when I first started, there was this idea that it's like, man, I am not nearly as smart as Jason Rahm or Joe Pruitt or Colin or whatever. I don't know all the details of this stuff, so man, I got to get studying and all that. Which there's personal responsibility there, but there was almost this sense of, fear of getting online on the community and saying, man, I'm only just going to ask this little bitty crazy, stupid question or whatever. It felt like that to me. But one of the great things about DevCentral is that, if you're at that beginning stage, like I was, and man, I still feel like I am to a certain extent sometimes, but, still throw it out there and people benefit from that stuff. So, that's been a really welcoming part of our community, is that, we've got some super smart, 50-pound brain guys walking around with all the answers, but there's a lot of people that, but even still, maybe I should say, they'll welcome you with open arms and say, hey, if you're just getting started, we were all there, and a lot of us are there even still. So it's really cool.
Yeah. To that end, Bob Bosco, mentioned you again. One of the things he always said, we'd go skiing together. Like we tried to take a company trip once a year, a bunch of us. And his big thing on the mountain's like, if you're not falling, you're not learning. And so, and that's right. It's true not only of skiing, but it's, you got to get out over your skis a little bit and pick up new skills. And you don't do that with fear, because fear holds you back, and there's paralysis there. And, I have imposter syndrome all the time. With all this new cloud stuff, I'm an old network engineer guy. And so, I'm pretty comfortable in Python, and I have a little bit of C background. But, you get into all these technologies where it's not necessarily the art of coding that's the problem. It's like, how do all these pieces fit together? And, I don't know why I would use XYZ over ABC. And so, there's some paralysis there with trying to figure out how all these pieces get together. And if you never ask questions because you're afraid of what, your other people will think of you, then, you're going to get left behind. And so, drop the fear and embrace the fact that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know anything.
That's right. I think it was Dr. Ken last week talked about the definition of an expert, which maybe I'll let him share it, but it's basically, so much about like so little or nothing at all or whatever it is. But yeah, man, you got to take the risk, give it a shot, ask a question, answer a question, even if it's like, hey, here's a question that involves 10 different parts, and I know maybe part of one of the parts or something like that. Man, get in there and add to the discussion. So that's what makes this community great. And just wanted to say thanks to everybody that contributes every day. So it's a beautiful place to be.
Absolutely. Okay. So that's a wrap on Pasilva's perspective. We'll have more of those in the future.
Yeah.
And now we're going to move on to a discussion about just tension in technology, because, there's a lot of technology that's amazing and makes your life so much better. And, I think about all the stupid little apps on my phone that, I used to have a GPS watch back in my, obviously when I ran a little bit more than I do now. But I had a GPS watch, and its function was to, record your paths, and it had a USB interface. And then, you would actually have a watch to tell time, and you would have a phone to be a phone. And then all these things start to consolidate, and you're like, oh, wow, I could put all that on my phone. And that's great. But then, what are the implications of that? And you think about where you take pictures. And, you're taking a picture of the woods, and you're just like, I love this. I'm in the woods. I want to take a picture. But because you also have GPS in your phone, then that image, unless you do things to disable, if on your phone you can even do that, then you get, geolocation markers on those images.
Yeah.
And I remember we were at ShowMeCon a couple years ago, which is a local security conference. If you were on with Dave Chronister with us a few weeks ago, he puts on ShowMeCon here in the St. Louis area every year. And I went to one of the talks that it was a guy talking about the darknet. And there was a speaker that was talking about, the one thing you don't want to do on the darknet is hurt people or hurt animals. Because if you share things in which you're doing those things, the hackers of the world will come after you. And so he shared a story where there was this guy who posted a video, was hurting animals and whatever. And through the images and video he shared, something to the effect of they actually isolated where he was, and it looked like it was, kind of terroristic activities. And they shared that with a nation state who then bombed the snot out of that place.
Wow.
And so, I don't have any idea if that story is true, but that's the story that was told. And you think about the tension with technology,
Mm-hmm.
and you think about, things that we'll talk about, a couple different topics within that. So, John, what's a topic that you would like to share with that tension that we have with technology?
Yeah, in fact, when you were sharing that story, another story that I heard really quick with the whole, modify the guy's location and all that, I heard this is more of a stalker kind of a situation. And I don't know, not to take all this to a negative place, but I guess there was a stalker guy that was going after this one really famous actress or whatever it was, and was able to use some of the high resolution pictures online that the actress had taken, like selfies of herself, and put it on Instagram or on, whatever, all these different social media platforms. And then was able to take the reflection in the glass of the buildings that she was at, and then I guess cross-reference a whole bunch of stuff, triangulate all that, and then use Google Images and Google Maps to be able to figure out, hey, there's 2 trees here and then a building here or whatever, and be able to find out exactly where this actress lives. So it's like, goodness gracious, man, this is crazy. So that's man, it's that tension, like you said, it's that balance with, as technology grows and evolves and gets better, then things can go sideways as well. And one of the things I know you asked, one of the technologies that's kind of new right now, and it's even in the name, is this new IP. So Huawei and China are kind of looking at development of this new internet protocol technology. There's been a lot of debate about this thing. Is it good? Is it bad? Is there a necessity for it? But it really gets to the heart of this tension in technology. One of the features that they're looking at, if you read the literature from Huawei, they're saying, hey, we're looking out to like 2030, and it's like a visionary, group that's kind of looking at what the art of the possible kind of a thing. But they're looking at one of the features, one of the capabilities of this new IP technology is like an overall kill switch. And they say, hey, as DDoS attacks come online, then we want to be able to just be like, bloop, and completely segment huge populations of the network. It's pretty wild stuff.
Which, of course, if you're thinking about it in the context of DDoS attacks, I think that's a totally legitimate reason you would develop technology like that. But in the ethicists of the world would look at, okay, so what are maybe some of the cons of a technology like that?
Yeah,
and certainly suppression of ideas might be something that's useful for.
Yeah,
and so there's a little tension there. We have a question about agility. No, we haven't talked about agility yet. We'll get there in a little bit, so stay tuned about that.
Stay tuned. It's coming up later in this show, but really coming up next week. But we'll get there.
And then if you go up one, I just wanted to answer that question about
this one here. Aurelian. Yeah,
so Aurelian, would you work on iRules naming terminology? So that's good. Definitely the way you name your iRules or local traffic policies or the variables that you use matters, right? Because if you just name it, Jason's iRule X or X1, X2, X3, right. That's not very useful to the people who come after you.
Right.
It may work for you, but definitely having, as you suggested here, that LTM, L2 endpoint, just by the way you've named that, I know that is, highly focused on the local traffic part of Big IP. It's focused down at layer 2. So maybe that's blocking at VLAN level or whatever. And then with ASM L7, I'm looking all the way up at web traffic and adaptive. So yeah, absolutely. Those kinds of things make a lot of sense. I don't know that any one size fits all as far as a naming policy works for everyone, but certainly, if you have a standard that you would like to share with the community, post that out there. Maybe we can start a discussion about that in the future.
Yeah, and I would broaden that to more than just iRules. I think naming conventions overall, whether it's virtual servers or even beyond, it's very important to name them, and with an easy to understand name. Yeah, exactly what Aurelian said here. So that's a great comment.
Yeah, but I will say from the standpoint of naming variables, it is you do want it to mean something, but also the longer names you are, the more memory you're using up because of the bytes to store those characters. So you have to have a balance there.
Yeah.
But back to our discussion about the tension in technology. Marcus, real quick.
Yeah. So a quick Marcus comment. Have a good one. Yeah. So just a great comment, Marcus. Good practice in coding to help people understand what parts are doing. I've heard some people say, "Hey, man, it was hard for me to write this stuff. It ought to be hard for people to understand it," right? Which that's not a good thing. That's not a good way to approach it.
In fact, a few years ago, we had a whole month where we dedicated it to programmability, and we filmed these short little mockumentary, "The More You Know,"
right,
from like NBC as "The More You Code," and I think that was one of them. It's like, hey, it was hard to write. It should be hard to understand. But also with comments, there's tension there, right? Because some people are of the opinion that if you code well, it's self-documenting, which that there's. I don't believe that's an argument that stands on its own very well.
Yeah.
But the other benefit of coding or for comments and iRules is they're for free. There's no performance impact because they're not compiled down into the bytecode. So comment away. The only thing that you sacrifice there is storage, but not performance.
Well, and that's good to know, especially based on what you just said about the length of the variable name itself. That is performance impacting, but the comment part, man, you can comment all day long. So that's good, and you should.
And one of our MVPs many years ago, Hamish, he had asked for like iRules pre-compilers to where he could have any number of things that he could move it out. So like if you're debugging iRules and you want an if condition, but if it's just a debugging condition, there would be a pre-compile flag that would allow you to obviously not compile all those logging conditions into the final thing for performance reasons. But if you needed to debug something that was going on, you could enable that flag, save it, and then all those things get compiled in. And we don't do roadmap here, so I don't know if that ever made it into the roadmap. But things like that from a suggestion standpoint, it's neat to see all the different ideas that our customers come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, So back to the tension in technology. We talked about new IP. What's one of the other ones that you want
I think about? There's a new one. There's a new one that's kind of rolling out right now, and that's 5G. So it's not just 4Gs, it's 5Gs. So it's like so much better than 4Gs. But no, 5G. So everyone's got their cell phone out. Everybody's wanting to connect, and they want super fast speeds. And the new 5G technology. First of all, the service providers, the cell phone companies are going to need to build out the infrastructure because it requires different actual antennas and all that stuff. So they're going to need to go swap all that stuff out. And then you got to go buy a new phone. Well, possibly buy a new phone, depending on what kind you have. That is, that's compatible with 5G technology. But obviously the good part about this is that it's like super fast speeds. I mean, people are just going to be downloading, entire movies in like 3 seconds or whatever, right? But then other people are like, wait a minute, it's, the government's trying to take control, and, it's all this oversight and what's really going on behind the scenes. And, so again, there's all these benefits that people talk about, but what are the drawbacks? It's an interesting discussion to have.
Yeah, I would just like, before we move on to another G, I would just like my 4G to actually connect well from my house. I mean, I'm right next to a highway. I'm in a very populous suburban area. And from my house, which is like kind of the top of the hill in my neighborhood, and clear views to all the different towers, I got like 2 bars. So it's like, my service provider, I won't name you, but fix it.
Exactly. Well, and that's, not to get too deep into the technology of 5G, but they use different wavelengths, and again, not to get into too deep on wavelengths, but as you get like tighter in terms of the wavelengths, you can cram more data in there, just in the electromagnetic spectrum and frequency and all that stuff, right? So the tighter these wavelengths are, the more data you can cram in, which is good. But the problem is those really short wavelengths don't travel very far before they just get blasted out. So if you're standing behind a building and you're trying to push these really short wavelength, waves through, you just can't do it. So then that requires all these, essentially these repeaters, or these devices to help boost the signal or continue the signal on with 5G, which is, that's going to take time and money and all that. So talking about your coverage, issue specifically,
you mean it's going to get worse?
I don't know. It depends on where you live.
Unless rights of way, right? Because you've got to establish all the rights of way, and who wants a big ugly tower in their backyard. And
yep, exactly. Yeah. Or even if they're smaller little towers, it's still it's that whole right of way thing that you talk about. So it's it's going to be an interesting thing. I mean, 5G is headed this way, whether we want it to or not. And I guess what I would say on this, or whether it's new IP or 5G or any other technological advancement that's happening, I don't know that you and I sitting here on DevCentral are going to change the nature of what happens with respect to the way 5G is implemented. But what we can do is educate ourselves and say, hey, this is what it means. These are some of the pros and cons. And what that might do from a practical perspective, back to your original story of, hey, all I did is took a picture out in the woods, and now all this metadata and geolocation data and all that is shared out. I don't know, maybe if I'm educated on that stuff, then maybe I turn off, location data for certain things or whatever, right? So you can implement some practical steps even in your own life, but you do need to understand how this stuff works. So.
Yeah. Yep. And so we were going to talk a little bit about net neutrality and big tech messaging control and all that kind of stuff. And, we're running a little short on time with that. So, what I would say to that is, back in the early 1900s when Rockefeller kind of controlled the rails and all that, there's this big antitrust. So the government's like, well, you can't solely dictate the way that charges are happening because you own the entire infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And so, in the US anyway, that's where, the tension between, companies and for things that become effective utilities for everyone, mm-hmm. How do you manage that? Because, private companies, are built on their own dollar. They build out their own things. And then, you have, big bad government coming in to tell them, well, you can't do that. Even though they carry all the risk and the burden. And so But at the same time, if you own all the rights of way and you own all the utilities, then you're effectively shutting out competition, which is for the U.S. again is what capitalism is built on capitalism, and so they came down and said you can't do that. And so when you look at big tech and from a messaging standpoint, but also the service providers and net neutrality, and say, well, yes, for the last mile. Some people have choices, but not everybody does have choice. You have one provider in your area and that's it. And if your provider says, hey, I know you want to watch that show that's provided by streamer company XYZ, but we have a partnership with another company. And with that company, we don't really have a partnership yet. And so we're going to charge you extra XYZ to go see that. So not only are you paying the streamer for the access to their content, but now you also have to possibly pay your service provider a little bit more in order to view that content, or they block you. And so from the standpoint of being for neutrality there, those are the arguments. But you look at the other side, and the provider's like, look, we're the ones building all these networks, and we have to carry the bandwidth for that. And so, I think that we should have a say in that. And so, I'm not here to say how it should be, but there's definitely tension there that the laws in our country here in the United States have to work out. And in fact, they're having hearings on that, and that's going on right now, and other countries I know have to deal with that as well.
Yep.
And so, Aurelian, you have a question about F5 and streaming technologies. There are protocol support for some of that, and I've seen solutions where they do like asynchronous control of that. So all the requests might come in the front door through big IP, and those get all distributed, and then asynchronously they bypass on the way back, so that the big IP doesn't have to carry the load of that traffic. It just really takes inbound requests, and then streaming happens outside. Of course, there's all kinds of ways that you can control that, but there are solutions for that.
Cool.
And I'm seeing a lot of pro Jason's hair, so I'm going to have to take those comments back to my family.
100 Mexico.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we I don't know that we listened or listed every single one of them, but a few minutes ago, Marius had one. Love the hair. Jason, maybe this is your new haircut, man.
I know.
Maybe this is just the way.
I don't know that I could afford that much
roll.
gel though, because it was a ridiculous amount I had to squeeze out of the tube to
Well,
get it to stay. And it really, I was trying to get it more straight, but it kind of floofed over like I'm wearing a Native American.
Give us a couple of different angles there. If you're straight on, or
I'll go to the
look
camera.
at
So
that.
straight on,
straight
and
ahead, and
there.
wow,
Yeah.
that's some rock and roll, man. That is some rock and roll. We need like an electric guitar in your hands right now. So, do you gel just the top? I guess.
I gelled it all
because
because if I didn't do the sides, this would be out along with the top. So it would be hard there, but just kind of poofy and ugly.
So next week, I propose that you don't gel the side, but you gel the top. Let us see that happen. Let us see what that looks like.
I'm warning you, that's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But
maybe
we might give it a go.
We'll have to, have to prepare ourselves.
I won't shower for days. All right, so agility.
Good to go, man.
So we're about out of time. We're okay. Yeah, we got a few minutes left. So agility happens next week. So as a note on that, there is no DevCentral Connects next week because agility is happening on Tuesday through Thursday, and we'll kick off at 8 a.m. Pacific every day with a keynote, and then each day is going to be a release of different on-demand demos and keynotes. The keynote in the morning, on-demand demos and breakout sessions. Yeah. And so it'll go across. We have stuff for application protection, service delivery, and so it's a lot. It looks like a lot of good content, and we're excited. I'll be watching some of these demos, and on top of that, so everything's pretty much on demand except for there's going to be one feature that's going to be live. And it's by some random dudes named Jason and John are going to have a little chat session.
Whoever those guys are, right?
Yeah. So 10 a.m. Pacific on the demand platform. When you're registered at Agility and you're on the platform, you'll see us there hanging out, doing a lot of stuff like this, just kind of chatting. So if you don't come and chat with us, it's just going to be us talking to each other, and we get tired of that. So
Yeah, people. Yeah, I want to look at you guys. I don't know that I want to look at Jason's hair again. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We love the hair.
I'll come a little bit better.
Agility,
than this.
Yeah, agility is kind of that. It's like, it's our customer conference every year. Here's Pytel. I'll go first. Billy Idle here.
Comment contest.
Which,
yes.
Yeah. By the way, Pytel, I popped this up there a second ago. Jason's hair next week. What should he do? That's the big question. So he did first. Billy Idle hair. I love the comment, the recommendation. But agility, it's our customer conference that we have every year. So, I mean, I guess you can think of it like, hey, F5's really gone above and beyond to try to make this agility experience still worthwhile and as close to in person as you can get now that we're quarantined and, social distance and all that kind of stuff. Right. So it's, so the keynotes are there, like Jason said, and the breakouts and all that it's going to be on demand. So you can just, watch them back. But one little note of kind of logistics or whatever, administrative, the demos and the breakouts that are scheduled for a particular day are not going to be released for those that register until it's like, hey, boom, here's the time that breakouts would start. Okay, now they're going to be available and out there for everybody. So, but then I think they're going to stay out there though for the duration. So like the ones that are released on day 1 will still be there on day 2, but day 2 won't be released until day 2 and then so forth with day 3. So,
right. And so come back 2 weeks from, join us next week in the 10 a.m. Pacific time. But then 2 weeks from today, we'll be back here on DevCentral Connects, and we will do a little recap of some of the sessions. We're going to dig into some of the keynotes, keynotes and breakouts and the demos, and then we'll come back with some of our lessons learned and points to look forward to coming in the future. And before we wrap here, we got a question from Aurelian. Is there any tension on FPGA hardware? I would say any technology has the potential for tension. And so you think about even with our FPGAs with TurboFlex, where we can reconfigure how your FPGA works based on what your profiles require. I mean, that's tremendous power, and I think that's great. But are there avenues to manipulate that? And so, is there tension? Sure. Do we know what that tension is all the time? I don't think so. And it takes, the excellent security researchers out there that say, hey, I know that you built this to do this thing, but what if I do this? And
what's the art of the possible, I guess?
Exactly.
And then you learn, oh my goodness, man, we had no idea it did that crazy thing. We didn't anticipate. Yeah, that's a great question, Aurelian.
So on the Billy Idle hair, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say you're not in the younger crowd, unless you're just a fan of 80s music, because that dates you a little bit.
Who isn't a fan of 80s, right? I love it. Good to go, man. Well, that's good stuff, man. Well, hey, so we'll look forward to Agility next week, and everybody out there, come join us. Register for Agility. Jason and I'll be there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, from 10 to 11 Pacific, and then the week after next, we'll be right back here and connecting with everyone on DevCentral Connect. So it's good stuff, man. Well, I think it's been good, Jason. Yeah, it's been a great time.
It has, and again, Jeff, Joe, Colin, thank you for what you built, and we're here today because of the passion and ideas that you guys had. So
that's right.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you again in 2 weeks here at DevCentral Connects. Next week on the Agility platform, 10 a.m. Pacific, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
That's right. All right, man. So for Mr. Billy Idle over here and me, it's been great to see everybody. We'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.